Welcome to the At-Homish podcast, creating spaces where we belong. Thank you again for joining us. I am honored to have a guest here today who I've known for a pretty short time, maybe just over a year or so, but just as I've heard about his journey and all that he's done in our community, I continue to be amazed by this man. I'm going to toss it over to him for a moment just to give him a second to introduce himself, and then we'll jump into the conversation for today.
My name is Wally Webster, and I am the founder and president of the Access Project, which was started in 2022 after 6 youth were killed in South Snohomish County. And I went to a meeting, and the audience got up and started talking about what you should do and what they should do and what they should do. And so I jumped up and opened my mouth and said, stop talking about what they should do, what you should do. Talk about what I am going to do to make my community more safe. So I went home that night, went to bed, woke up about 2 o'clock and started writing down names.
Okay.
And I wrote down about 20 names on a sheet of paper, went back to bed, got up that morning and started dialing. 3 o'clock that afternoon, I had about 15 people in a conference room. Judges, mayors, city council members, ministers, people from a cross-section of the community. And we started talking about how we could get in front of these behaviors that result in criminal activities and self-harm. And from that, we created the Access Project. And that's our primary objective, is to interdict the behaviors that youth have before they act out in violence. Now, a little bit more about my background is I get excited when I talk about that project.
I can imagine.
But my background, I grew up in the South. I grew up in Alabama, and I grew up under Jim Crow. And the segregation was law of the land.
Right.
And as you probably know, segregation laws, it was institutionalized, and they were enforced by police officers during the day.
Right.
And those same police officers enforced it at night, but they did it with a white sheet over their head on horseback, and they were known as the KKK. I left Alabama, and what prompted me to leave Alabama was Emmett Till was killed. I was about 10 years old then, and my dad, we have 4 boys and 1 girl in our family. My dad put the 4 boys on the floor, back against the wall, and gave us a lecture that I would never forget to this day of what you need to do to survive in the South. You can never, ever look a white woman in the face. You always say yes, sir, and no, sir, to a white man. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you see what happened to that boy in Mississippi when he was flirting with this white woman? I was about 10, 11 years old. I made up in my mind then that I was going to leave Alabama.
Yeah.
When I graduated from high school, I wasn't brilliant, but because of my age, I graduated from high school at 16 and turned 17 that November. And I wrote a letter to my brother who was in Oakland to tell him I was coming to Oakland. And I told my mother and father that I was leaving, and they didn't believe me. And finally, I convinced them that I was leaving. And my mom had me to kill a chicken. She fried that chicken, baked me a pound cake, and gave me a loaf of bread. And I left Alabama with that, a small box of clothes in it, and $20 in my pocket to go to Oakland.
What year was that?
That was in 1962.
Okay.
And in 1962, I got to Oakland. They didn't have cell phones then. And my brother didn't answer my letter. So I stayed in the bus station for 2 nights. And this one lady walked up to me and said, I've noticed you've been in this bus station a long time. Is there anybody I can call to come get you? I said, I don't have a number in Oakland, but you can call my mom. My mom called another relative, which was her brother, in Oakland, and he came and got me. And that's how I stayed in Oakland until December. In October of 62, one of those teams were playing in the World Series. And I had an uncle that I'd never seen before, came from Pasco, Washington to Oakland to go to World Series. And he came to visit us. I made sure that he called my mom because she had talked about him for forever. And they made arrangements for her to come to Pasco for Christmas. Instead of her going back to Theodore, Alabama, where we lived, he drove her to Oakland to see us. And then he asked me if I would like to keep him company going back to Pasco. This is December of 62. And I said yes. On the way back, we had many conversations. And one of those conversations was, do you want to go to college? And I said yes. And so January 3rd, I never will forget the day, of 1963, he took me to Columbia Basin College to enroll, which was a community college.
Right.
The admissions person sitting behind the desk, after talking to me for about 5 minutes, said, "You are not college material." And he pointed to a bulletin board on the wall there to his left, and he said, "You see that bulletin board?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Standard Oil has some truck driving jobs, and I think you make a great truck driver." So I said, "Yes, sir." Coming from the South, you don't dispute a white man, right?
Right, for
I
sure.
said, "Yes, sir." So I got up and walking out the door. Another gentleman walks up, put his arms around me, around my shoulders, and I looked over and it was another white man, and I froze. That's the first time in my life I had been that close to a white person, especially with his arms on my shoulders. He said, "I overheard that conversation. I'd like for you to sit down and wait for me." And I did. And when he finished, he came over and said, "You want to go to college?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you want to go to college?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm going to get you in, but I want you to major in accounting." I said, "What's that?" And he pointed to this other kid, and he said, "If he can get 2 + 2 = 4 in 2 minutes, you get 2 + 2 = 4 in 2 hours. Your grade is the same." I said, "Oh, yes, sir." I got my AA in accounting. I didn't have the money to go on to WSU, so I got another AA in applied science. And at that time, I had become a very active in the civil rights movement, had created a chapter of CORE, Congress of Racial Equality.
Right, okay.
First chapter in the Tri-Cities. Of the 3 cities, Pasco, Kennewick, and Richland. I won't go into the history of that, but Richland was pretty much government town. You had to be a certain grade level to live there. Kennewick was totally segregated. And matter of fact, Jack Tanner, civil rights leader here in the Northwest, named Kennewick the Birmingham of the Northwest. Black folks lived in East Pasco because that's the only place they could live once the Hanford nuclear energy buildings were built. So 95% of Black folks lived in East Pasco, and so did I. And I kept feeling this is the same segregation I was involved in, felt when I was in Alabama. And so I became very active and had a school there. We closed the school down because it was de facto segregated. And I found this out much later, but at that time, one thing that happened is that the Selective Service Board was local, and they determined who got chosen to go to military or who was exempt.
Right.
And they said, "Let's get rid of this troublemaker Webster." So I got a letter saying, "Congratulations, you have been inducted into the United States Army." Instead of going into the Army, I was advised by a close friend at that time to go join the Air Force. So I went and joined the Air Force. I was supposed to be in the Army on July 5th, but I went into the Air Force on July 1st. When I came out of the Air Force, I went on and got my undergraduate in accounting, and then I got my master's at Central Washington. From there, I went on to spend 32 years in the financial services industry and was able to rise to the level of senior vice president at Bank of America after spending 32 years, and also after not being college material.
Right.
Now, today, I serve as a trustee of Edmonds College. I serve on the board of directors of the Linwood Public Facilities District, also involved with the Linwood Neighborhood Center Steering Committee, raising the funds for that $300 million building. And I'm on the Snohomish County SMART team, which is Snohomish County Multiple Agency Response Team. And anytime there's a use of force by a police officer, we get called to go out to that site, no matter where it is in Snohomish County. So when you told me to meet you in Snohomish, I knew exactly where I was coming. And that's kind of my background. That's kind of my history. And I moved to the west side of Washington in 1978. And that's when I joined the bank and lived in the west side ever since. So that's the background. And then after I retired, of course, I was still involved with the college and the Public Facilities District, Linwood Chief of Police Advisory Committee, and all of those. And when these youth were having these, I'm going to say, these murderous activities in the city, and what brought all of this on really is that a 72-year-old man was sitting in his car drinking his coffee in the park, and he got caught in the crossfire and killed sitting behind the steering wheel of his car. That is kind of what woke up the community and said, we've got to do something. These other young people getting killed in the parks, and there was concern, but it was not elevated to the level that it was when this gentleman was killed sitting in his car, being caught in the crossfire. And so that's what prompted us to get moving. And the Access Project has 3 components to it. The first component is to reach the youth who are having difficulties, whether it's isolation, being bullied, depression, and all of those things that cause them to act up. We identify those through various means, and I'll get back to that in a minute. And then we have what we call an intake process. In that intake process, we do interviewing them. We may interview them 3, 4, 5 times before they really open up and say, this is what's causing me to act the way I act. And then we have gone out, what we call our partners and referrals out, and we have relationships with many, many organizations in the community. So if a youth comes in crisis, we've got an organization that we can go to that has mental health specialists.
Right.
If they just they're lonely and just in isolation, then we have organizations we can take them to. So that's the component. We recruit them, or they self-refer. We interview in our intake process, and we take them out and place them with a community organization that exists. I will say that this county has some of the best organizations that I've seen anywhere, but they have the same challenge that other communities have in that they operate somewhat isolated.
Yes.
They operate isolated. So we have to navigate this youth maybe to 1 or 2 organizations. And when I say navigate, we don't send an email or give them a slip of paper. We take this youth to this partner and stay there until the person is taken into that organization's care and meets the interview. We navigate that for them. And that's what one of the problems is that they don't know how to navigate the systems to get the help that they need. So that's kind of what we do as a Access Project. Now, how do we reach these youth? We've had 3 or 4 focus groups, and including the superintendent of Edmonds School District allowed us to meet a couple of times with her student advisory committee.
Oh, okay.
And they're made up of students from all the different high schools.
Right.
The things that came out of all of these focus group meetings is that if you want to reach these youth, you got to reach them through sports, music, art. And if you don't do that, chances are you won't meet them because they won't self-express.
Sure.
So we created what we call the Cops versus Youth basketball teams. And we go out in the community and recruit these students from the various high schools and even middle schools to come in and play basketball against the police officers. And we've had police officers from almost all the agencies in the county. And they are very competitive.
I believe it.
And after the games, we sit them in a circle and we talk. And these youth share their experiences. The cops share their experiences. And the cops, for an example, tell them 80% of my calls have been regarding youth activities. And here's what we're finding, the kinds of behaviors that they're being called out for. And the youth will share with them what grade they're in and some of the challenges that they're having, being bullied at school, and the teacher doesn't listen to me, or teacher doesn't call on me, and all of those kinds of things. And as a result of that, we are able to identify which youth and from that circle needs additional follow-up. And the police officers will share their business cards with them and tell them, I'd rather for you to give me a call on my cell phone than for me to get a call on my 911 call. And that's how that comes together. And in the art, we have the students just draw whatever they're feeling. And when you see something that you don't understand is something more than the sunset or the sunrise, we get an art therapist to help us interpret, trying to figure out what that youth is telling us. And what we have found out is that youth who are victims or subjected to domestic violence, who are subjected to sexual abuse, they won't tell you that that's what's going on in my home, but they'll express it in art or in poetry. And we give them a chance to express that and then take the necessary time to get them to tell us what it is that they're experiencing.
Right.
And so that's the kind of issues that we're involved with and the issues that we try to work with our youth in this community. Also from that discussion with cops and clergy, as well as from the intake process, we sometimes get youth to say, I want to be an engineer. We have one that say, I want to be an engineer.
Yeah. Okay.
So we got them an opportunity to go through the water center at the Payne Field.
Oh, right.
We got them to go through that and look at that. And then the city of Linwood, one of their engineers, or I think he works with the engineers, like an assistant or something, agreed to take the student and take him around with him, let him shadow and see what all the engineers do. And so he can identify which one he wants to be involved with. So that's the kind of work that we do.
That's awesome. When you mentioned Payton Field, it made me think about the Red Tail Hawks. Are you connected with them?
We're not connected with the Red Tail Hawks.
Okay.
I have interviewed and worked and know who they are, but we have not referred any students to them at this point.
Okay. Goes back to what I feel you were saying when you're talking about there's so many different groups and people out there, but they're working in isolation or in silos, like we tend to say.
Right.
And so I know in a couple of my roles, really wanting to work on bringing folks together, bringing awareness to what's out there, because I worked in the Edmonds School District previously.
Oh.
Yeah, I was a special education programs manager there. And I was there from 2019 to 2021.
Okay.
And so right before the Access Project started up.
Sure.
But it was like, because I was with special education, was not aware of other things that were happening around the communities or what we were doing to support students.
Well, let me say that with Edmonds School District and Everett School District, we have signed a memorandum of agreement to work with their students. And included in this agreement is that they refer their threat assessed level 2.
Yeah, threat level 2, right.
To us.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably know how that
I do, yes.
Okay. So we take those students who are normally expelled or suspended, those threat level 2s, because they've threatened somebody or they've had with bodily harm or they've had a weapon or something that made them more of a threat than the level 1 and caused them to be expelled from school. And so we work with them from a tutoring standpoint and then work with the Edmonds School District, work with them to get the online classes to keep them up to speed with the students and the grades that they're in so that when they go back with their cohorts as opposed to being a grade behind.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because, again, having worked in education, if a student was receiving special services, I would typically be a part of those threat assessment meetings.
Oh, I see.
Yes. And when we talk about, what's been identified as the school to prison pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
when students are missing out on their education, there's a correlation between I can't make progress here and look at the numbers of people who end up in prison. And so our state law requires us to ensure that these students still receive access to education in some way.
Yes.
So if this person is, for whatever reason, because we know there's so many layers to it, we've identified that they could potentially be a threat. Okay, they're not in school,
Right.
but we're still educating them in some way. So when they come back, that's the hope that they are able to come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's through their e-learning academy.
Right. Yes.
And the teachers. And even then, they have to have tutors to help them with their work. And we can provide that. We've gotten some funding for that to help pay for tutors to tutor these youth that's been expelled.
So you would have made my life easier, because in my role, I would reach out and try to find tutors. Yes. And so you can't come on a year after me. It's like, just call Wally. We'll get them in there.
And we get tutors who are parents that are no longer working in their profession. Mm-hmm. We get teachers who want to spend some extra hours after they get off from work, from their contract work. And it's really a rewarding experience to see some of these students when they are performing at the grade level that they're in when they've been expelled.
Right. Now here's a question. I think we had talked a little bit about Make It Worthy before, but I know I can't remember if they have mostly younger kids in their program.
Mostly younger kids.
Okay.
Yes. Making young. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Our focus group is 13 to 17.
Okay. Right.
And the reason for that is when you're 13 and above, they can come to us, and if they say, don't tell my parents, then we don't have to tell their parents.
Right.
We've had a couple that was 12, and they had to come with parental consent and guidance and everything. And we didn't meet with them without their parents, unless the parent agreed to do so.
Right.
But the 13 and above, we didn't have to let anybody know that they were meeting with us.
Right. And I think it's important to identify, and I know that this may land negatively with some people. Sometimes the parents are the problem.
Oh, no question.
But that goes back into that conversation around parental rights, where I know there are people in the community who are like, well, what do you mean you're talking to my child and I can't be a part of that conversation? I'm a parent. I have rights. And it's like, absolutely. And I hope you have a great supportive relationship with your kiddo. And if you do, we will, by all means, connect with you and have you be a part of the process. Yes. But if what you're currently doing is causing harm to this child, and now we have to talk with the parent, and when they're in front of us, things might be like, oh, well, thank you for your help and your support. And we don't know what happens once they get back in the car or go home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll tell them that if you want to know, then you have to get your child's permission.
Yes.
And we have other situations where I had one parent who came in and she said, I need help.
Okay.
She said, I kiss my 3 kids on the forehead when I leave in the mornings, and I kiss them on the forehead when I get back at night. I don't see them during the day. I'm working 2 jobs and sometimes 3 jobs. My 12-year-old is starting to rebel.
Oh, no.
Because I cook the food and put it in the refrigerator. His job is to take it out, put it in the microwave, warm it up, and the 3 of them have their food. His job is also to help them get ready for school in the morning and go to school. And he's rebelling. And I need more help. Now, here's a case where a mother, single parent, doesn't see her child awake 5 days and sometimes 6 days a week.
Right.
And that's where the breakdown is. And that's where we work with community organizations that could help. I give you another example. This was one of our first cases where 3 boys, 18, 16, and 13, were left in their apartment by their mother, and she flew back to El Salvador and just left them. And the 13-year-old went and asked a school's cafeteria director if he could have some food because he was hungry. And that food director escalated that situation up. And then that's how we found out about the family. The thing I wanted to point out here is after several meetings, we could tell that the 18-year-old wouldn't say a thing. You could tell he was angry, to tell you the truth. So we thought we would interview him separately. In that interview, he said, "I'm angry at my brother for asking for food." And we tried to, well, tell us about that. Why would you be angry? Because that's my job. That's my job. The only way that he could feed them is to go out and commit a crime because he had no other means of feeding them, or they would have been eating before he went and asked the cafeteria director. And the three boys insisted on staying together. They didn't want to be separated. So we found a way to keep them in their same apartment. People that came in and cleaned and fed them, made sure they had food, got them ready for school, kept their clothes clean, kept their apartment clean, and they thrived. So that's where about 3 community organizations came together and we worked through that. But those are situations that a lot of youth find themselves in before they act out in violence. And this 18-year-old would have acted out in violence to feed his brother if there was no other way to get the food.
Like after this, I'm going to have to go call my mom. Because I think back to the community that I was born into, and my mom was like, "I want to get us out of here so you have a better opportunity." And so when I think about times in my life, if someone came up to me, folks that were involved in criminal activity, and they're like, "Hey, you want to do this? You want to do that?" And I'm like, "My mom will tear me up if I get involved in any of that," And so that was always instilled in me that I feel I would never go down that path. But like you're saying, mom hopped the flight, she's out of country, and they're left to just kind of fend for themselves.
And she was probably right, thinking that they would do better alone in the United States than they would taking them back to El Salvador. But based on our culture and our standards of life, she was neglecting her kids. It was absolute neglect.
I've never been to El Salvador.
I haven't either.
And I don't know, what the situation would have been that she's going back into. But I feel like, maybe we need to reframe how we look at this world in general. Because if you leave a kid alone here in the United States, there's stuff they can get into.
Oh, absolutely.
You go to other countries and leave them to kind of figure it out. There's stuff they can get into. And so it's like, how can we have better support services and resources for our kids? Well, better parents. I said it. But it's like, how can we better support our adults in our communities so they're able to support the kids? And so they have what they need. So that's what we do in a nutshell. Also work with the police departments. Because we're trying to get them to, as opposed to an arrest, can we help this kid? That so-called quote unquote crime is not one that by law, you've got to make an arrest. So is that something that you can refer to us that we can kind of get our hands around and help as well? So but we're working with that. We just met with the Everett Police Department and Chief DeRoss. I like him.
And we're growing. We kind of focused our service area in South Snohomish County because that's where the activities were. And now, as we become more known, people are reaching out to, and organizations like the chief of Everett reached out to us to say, come talk to us because we might need your services. And so we've had a couple of meetings and we think we'll go someplace with that.
It's so important to have those connections. Because like we mentioned, there's so many different people out there that are wanting to do the work, or organizations that can provide support. We just have to be connected.
Just be connected. That's exactly right.
And on the note of being connected, because I'm sure our listeners are probably like, oh my God, like this is a powerful thing that's happening. Are you looking for more people to be involved with the Access Project? And how would someone be involved if there was an opportunity?
When you say people There are individuals as well as organizations.
Okay.
From an individual standpoint, we're always looking for people with skills like they can teach reading, science, tutoring, and math. So we always need those individuals. Also, we need individuals who have expertise in mental health services.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times these youth do not have insurance, so they can't go to a place that requires insurance.
Right.
But if we can get a counselor who's professional and qualified, who's willing to do it on a one-on-one basis, and if they require a few dollars for their services and their time, we have and get grants to do that, to pay those fees. So we need professionals in teaching the basic of education, and we need professionals who have mental health counseling skills and experiences. That's on the individual side. From an organizational side, a lot of these youth, their whole world is wrapped up in their cell phone.
Oh, there's that.
And they don't have a community. They don't have relationships. And so what we try to do in those cases is refer them to organizations where they can get the opportunity to interact with other youth their ages, whether that's the Boys and Girls Club or whatever organization that might be, and so that they can start socializing and engaging with peers and creating a community that they have not been experienced, they've not had, simply because their lives have been buried into the cell phone.
That makes a difference. I think about, the most influential people for our youth is other youth.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And when I think about my first experience being back in schools, I was asked to be a community evaluator for the senior boards. And I'm like, I'm going into a high school. What's this going to be like? And, you hear things on the news that happen with kiddos sometimes. And it's like the majority of our kids are doing good stuff.
Yes.
And there's a couple of them out there that are having different challenges for different reasons. But it's like, how do we better create that peer connection to make sure they're supported?
Exactly.
Because a lot of times they don't want to listen to us old heads.
The other thing that we were experiencing in the Edmonds school district, and we also went to Jackson High School, which is part of Everett School District, and we implemented a peer-to-peer mediators program. And we brought together about 60, 65 youth on a Saturday and provide them with training on how to mediate conflict with their peers. And as part of that training, we have a contract, or they have a contract, that they have to sign with the two people who have the conflict as well as the mediator in terms of confidentiality, and you don't call names, you don't talk over, and we come to a resolution, with the exception of certain things, as you probably know about the threat assessment, or certain things that are said, you have to escalate.
Absolutely. Yeah, mandated reporting. Yeah.
So we train them on those things as well. And they mediate conflicts with their peers. Now, the reason that what brought that to mind is peer mediators have more conflicts than you believe between teacher and student. And a lot of times it's a lack of understanding. Sometimes it's a student who is not performing at the level that the teacher is teaching, and that student is feeling left out and feeling isolated and doesn't have the attention that they feel that the other students are getting, who understands what that teacher is teaching. And as a result of that, you have a conflict. The other thing that we have found out and learned is youth today don't respect you because of your title. Or because of who you are, your authority. They respect you because of the relationship and the trust and the relationship that you have between the two. And many of the people in authoritative positions, I'm the principal, so
that doesn't work.
It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. And that's the thing that we have to to work through as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think it depends on what position you're in. Because I remember I had a situation, it was a couple years back, but this kiddo was having some challenges at the school, and the school reached out to me for some additional support.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And so we had a meeting with the kid, the parents, and the administrator asked the student well, can you please share your side of the story?
Right.
And the student didn't say anything. And I'm sitting here like, okay. And then the parent further encouraged the kid, like, hey, this is your opportunity to share your side of the story. Please, speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't say anything. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, like, hey, what are we going to do here? Because just going right back to what you said about relationships, I'm like, I don't have a relationship with this kid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a relationship with this family. Like, I could say something, but is anything that I'm going to say, is that going to make a difference for this kiddo? But then I did kind of play the authority card for a second, because being a district administrator at the time, I pretty much kind of leaned in and said, hey, I don't know the full story here. But right now, we have your principal who asked you to share your story. Your parents are asking you to share your story. I don't think you know who I am. I work with the district office. We are all here right now to make sure that you have access to your educational opportunity so that you can move forward from here.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to choose to not talk when I am here, I have to go back and say, we don't have any other answers.
Right.
And then he started talking.
Oh,
and then afterwards, he would like come up and hug me like, oh, thank you so much. And I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I'm like, okay. So sometimes it works, but I'm right there with you.
You're right.
Where it's like, I hate that there are some kids who don't want to respect their teachers because, oh, here are all these teachers and you're just a teacher. Never say that, because the things that teachers are doing every day to help our kiddos.
Yes.
And the same thing with the principal. Like, oh, well, you're the head of the teachers. It's like, you don't know what goes into running a building. Like, are you kidding me right now?
That's exactly right.
And so these people, I mean, they have dedicated their lives to ensuring that our youth have access to opportunity.
Absolutely.
Just by virtue of that, they deserve our respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Then they just don't get the whole picture.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
But I even think about, on the note of respect, and I have to acknowledge this for a second, I think about my mom, the older people who are in my community. That was another motivator for me, where it's like, boy, you better not act up.
I know what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
And we had a guy in our neighborhood named Mr. Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept an eye on us. And if Mr. Marshall said, I'm going to spank you, he hit you a couple times with a switch. And he said, I'm going to tell your dad. No. Please don't tell dad. Please don't tell dad. Because I know when I get home, it's going to be like 5 or 6 or 10 switch.
Yeah.
But that was community.
Right. Yeah.
That's community.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted to make your community proud of what you do.
Absolutely.
And the people in your community.
Yes.
And I don't know how you're going to edit this, but...
Uh-oh. Get ready.
It's going back to the guy who put his arms around my shoulder and said, wait for me.
Yeah.
After that day, I mentioned I got my AA in accounting. I got my AA in applied science.
Mm-hmm.
I got my undergraduate in accounting. I got my master's. And then I went to University of Washington School of Banking, and I completed that certification program.
Yeah.
And every single one of those certificates, I sent it to him.
Hey.
I sent it, and we would talk maybe once every year or 6 months or whatever. That one arm around my shoulder was the turning point in my life. And I often think where I would be and what I would be doing if he had not overheard that conversation, or if he had not gotten up and said, wait for me. It can bring tears in my eyes because...
I'm holding mine back right now.
It was a turning point in my life.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's so powerful to me with what you're saying is having been born in Alabama in the Jim Crow South, where interactions with white people were like, ooh, and here's this man who has been this influential in your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I had another mentor. When I joined the bank had gone through a consent decree, discrimination against women. And they had filed a class action lawsuit, and they had settled and got this consent decree. And they were looking for someone to execute this consent decree. A recruiting agency got me in touch with the bank, and I accepted the job. And the president of the bank, John Mangles, I'll just call his name because he was so influential. As I was working through that consent decree, it was a 3-year decree, and I got it done in 2. And he asked me, so what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to start looking for a job. I understand that Boeing is hiring again and everything else. And he said, well, I want you to think about working here, staying on. And he said, but here's what I want you to know. And remember this. An organization, no matter where you go, is the same as your body. You got a brain, lungs, heart, liver. And he said, then you have your arms, your legs, your ears. An organization is the same way. If you're going to work for an organization, work in the heart, the liver, the lung of the organization. Don't make your career in the part of the organization that they can easily cut off. You can easily cut off your arm, you'll still survive. You can cut off your leg and you still survive. You cut off your ear, you still survive. But if you take out your heart and your lung, you will not survive. He said, that's the part of the organization that you want to be in. And he helped me make the transition into what I call the mainline organizations. And that's where the money is made. That's where the rewards are given. That's where the bonuses are given. And he coached me all the way through. So I've had 2 white men in my life that's made significant turning points in contributions. Coming out of the Jim Crow South, I never, ever thought of it. It was hard for my dad.
I can imagine.
To believe and understand it. It was very hard.
Yeah.
That's my story. I'm going to stick to it.
Well, you make interviewing very easy because when you're introducing yourself and talking about access and your journey, you would state a question and give the answer. So I didn't have to answer. I'm just sitting back like, this is story time for me. I'll take it all in, But I really appreciate the opportunity to hear your story, hear your journey. Because, it was just so powerful, so impactful. And the work you're doing now is so meaningful for so many people. There was a story you mentioned to me one time that I'd love for you to share. I think it kind of led to me, wanting to have you on, especially as we hit next month. It's been 70 years since Emmett Till was killed.
Okay.
Which is just so crazy to think about. But you're telling me a story about horses coming down the street.
Oh, yeah. What I was sharing is that when we were growing up, as I mentioned earlier, the police in uniform enforced the laws during the day, and they put white sheets over their face, and they got on horsebacks with lit torch, and they rode from wherever they came from up to the hill to light the cross where they had their ceremony. You can hear the horse trots way before you could see them, and they will stop in front of different individuals' houses and just stand there. And then they may move on after a while. Well, my dad, when he heard the horse trots, he would make us blow out all the lights, turn off all the lights. If there's a lamp burning, blow out the lamp. And he would make us sit on the floor. And he would slip out the back door with his rifle.
Yes.
Thinking that if they attempt to burn down this house with my kids in it, I'm going to shoot. Didn't think much of it then, especially after they moved on.
Right.
But later on, I started thinking, what if they had decided to burn the house or do something, and he shot one of them? Where would that have been? We would not have been able to live there any longer.
Much less anyone else in the community. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that sticks with me a lot. And it's connected to that. I told you I went into the military.
Right.
And I was a medic.
Yeah, me too.
Were you?
Yeah. See.
Okay. And I was on my way to Vietnam, and we stopped in Taipei, Taiwan to refuel. And this guy comes on the plane and says, Airman Webster, raise your hand. Who knows my name? I'm in Taiwan. Who knows my name?
Right.
And so I reluctantly, then he called my name a couple of times, and I raised my hand. He said, come go with me. And then I'm really concerned. Well, what it was, they had changed my orders from going to Da Nang, Vietnam, to Tachikawa, Japan. And it's where all of the soldiers, the casualties came out of Vietnam.
Right.
They were basically triaged in Manila. And if they can go to the U.S., they would fly them on. If they couldn't make it, they would bring them to Tachikawa. And we were getting so many casualties in those days that they were just diverting soldiers to Japan. But the thing that I wanted to say about that is when I saw the U.S. flag, it was mounted on the horsebacks of these folks with, we had the Confederate flag on one side, the U.S. flag on the other, and you had the guy sitting in the center with a white sheet over his head.
Yeah.
And in his hand was a torch. That's the U.S. flag that I got to know. After I was inducted and raised my hand, those were just words. They didn't mean anything to me. After I got to Japan in Tachikawa, right outside of Tokyo, and started working on the wards, and I started to pull the sheets over these soldiers' heads that didn't make it. And those individuals, many, many of them would say, tell my mother I love her. Tell my fiance I love her. Tell my sister I love her. But sometimes tell my dad I forgive him. And every one of those, I said, yes, I will. Yes, I will. Knowing that I would never, ever see that mother, that fiance, because I didn't even know their names.
Right.
And I carried that with me for a long time. But the thing that happened is that it was there that I got to appreciate the flag. It was there that I developed a pride and respect for that flag. It was there when I got off the plane after I served my 2 years and a couple months and got back to Travis Air Force Base in California that I fell on my knees and I kissed the ground. And it was because of those soldiers who also made a turning point in my life.
That's powerful.
So the military did a lot for me, and it enabled me. I mentioned going on to Central Washington, got my undergraduate and graduate.
Right.
I got that on the GI Bill.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, was able to save enough money to make the first down payment on our first house.
Hey, right.
That was from the GI Bill, and that was from the military. So I've had some beautiful experiences in my life.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think back to Alabama and that experience because, I mean, you were born here.
Yes.
But you were born into a place that wasn't home.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so to then have that experience overseas even.
Yes.
With the military.
Yes.
To then be able to feel at-homish here now. Yeah.
All the way to Tokyo, Japan, to feel like I'm at home now.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
Oh, my gosh.
You're so right. It's been a beautiful journey.
So I've got two more quick questions here before we wrap up. The one question, of course, is what do you want our listeners today to leave with? What would be some of your key messaging for them? My
key message would be that instead of sitting back and judging our youth and their behavior today, but to take an active role in becoming a friend and a model and letting them shadow and developing a trust in them because they need someone who cares. They need to feel belonging. They need to feel that someone is interested in their lives and their success. And by standing back and judging and not getting involved in offering your help and your services, it is a disservice when you do that. So I would say to them is not judge them. I'll give you an example. I was talking to one youth and we got to talking about the cell phone. And he said to me, how would you like to go and get a crank and start your car with?
Mm-hmm.
How would you like to go out to your car and start turning and cranking it? And that's how you start your car. Would you like to go back to that?
Yeah.
And I said, no. He said, we're not going to go back on our cell phone. He said, but what we need to do is learn how to use them wisely and effectively. So instead of judging, let's try to find a way that we can help them. So that's one thing I will leave. The other thing that I would say is that our youth today or our leaders tomorrow, they are the future. We have an opportunity to determine what the future holds by working with our youth today.
Absolutely.
And if you want to give up on a youth in the youth today and say, it's impossible to help them, you've just said, I've given up on the future of my country and it's impossible to make a difference because they are the ones who will be working and putting funds into Social Security. They are the ones. And if we don't give them the tools to do that, then we're going to suffer them.
Right.
They're our future.
They are. On the note of tools, I got something for you today.
Okay.
Because I know you work with youth. And so we had a guest on episode 2 of this season, Kola Malik. I don't know if you know his name.
No.
But he's a rap artist who goes by the name Kid Sensation.
Oh, I think I've heard that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he has a book that he's put together. It's called Kings. And it's about young men discovering purpose and shaping their destiny.
Oh.
And so what I did with the previous podcast episode, I asked people if they shared it or comment on it or tag me that, I select one to get this book and, get it in the hands of some young people. And one person was a teacher. So I was like, okay, hey, here's a book for you. But I know that you're working with youth.
Yes.
And so I have here 2 autographed copies from him.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. And so I want to pass these on to you.
That's an excellent gift. Thank you so much.
To share. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I've got a 17-year-old grandson. I like to have him read that book.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. This other book that I have here, I pulled it out simply because of one of the stories I knew you were going to share. You even mentioned Emmett Till without me having to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But last year I had an opportunity to meet Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like a cousin of Emmett Till.
Oh, yeah.
And when he was sharing the story of, he was at the store when that happened.
Oh, man.
And then he was in the house.
When they pulled him out.
When they pulled Emmett out. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm getting chills thinking about it right now. But when we have these conversations about these things that happened in our history, this is people's life's journey that are here with us now. This isn't something that's so far ago. And,
Man, like I said, they didn't have cell phones. And matter of fact, we didn't even have a telephone that I can recall. But the word traveled like you would not believe the night that he was taken out of his house.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it? Maybe 4 or 5 days later, they found him in the river, in that river.
Well, a few days of trouble, full of troubles. Well,
yes.
A couple days.
Yes, yeah. The whole time, man, the whole community was on edge. I mean, it was just the tension in the air was unbelievable when he was killed. Everybody was kind of going through their heads. Have I done anything that could have brought that on me? Have I done anything like that that could have brought that on my family? What can I do to make that not happen on my family? It was almost torture. And it was just like it was intended. It was intended to be terror. And it terrorized the whole Black South.
Yeah.
The way that they did it. Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I think about, because it was before I was born, but I remember when I saw the Jet magazine where they posted the pictures, and I'm sitting there probably about 10 years old when I saw it, And I'm like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just so disturbing that someone could do something like that.
You know, that was mixed feelings when his mom decided that she would open the casket. Many people, why would you do that? But when you look back on it, that had one of the most profound impacts that you can ever have on how this kid was treated.
Right.
And the folks, his relatives that he was in this house living with, and there were even some that were visiting, when they came to the door and knocked to take him out of that house, they did not stop him. They could not stop.
No.
And I think back, they would have the same implications that I was thinking about my dad when he went out the back door with the rifle. If they had done anything, they would have burned the house down. They would have killed every single one of them if they had tried to perfect. So they let him go.
Or anybody to say anything else against him.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I went to the monument in Montgomery, Alabama with the lynchings. And it's like the things that people were being killed for back then.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh.
Right.
You know, didn't step off the sidewalk, you know?
And that's the other thing. We were taught, you put your head down and you step off the sidewalk. You'd never look me in the face. You put your head down and go to the side and go.
Right. And it wasn't too different in the late 70s, early 80s when my mom's like, well, you be careful when you go here. Yep. And if someone says something, you mind your business.
Yes, you mind your business.
Yeah. Because when I think back to my story, I know we're going to wrap up here pretty soon. I remember in the late 70s, early 80s in Atlanta, that was the missing and murdered children. And there was a lot of little kids who looked like me who ended up disappearing.
Absolutely.
And then, Wayne Williams, he was the person who was placed in jail for, I think, 2 of them, but they were like 30-something kids. And some people say that, there were probably some people in sheets that grabbed up some kids.
Absolutely.
Because it was just a time where it's like, oh, well, this is just what's happening.
Absolutely.
And nobody's digging into what's happening to these kids, And so several times during our lifetimes, folks like us been disappeared and you can't say anything about it.
No question about it.
Yeah. And so it's crazy to think that we're at a time now where people are disappearing.
Yes.
Being detained.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Openly.
And people trying to bury the history. And so we're not too far from that. Yeah. But, I think that's one of the reasons why we do the work that we do. I so appreciate what you're doing. We're trying to help kids, help families. I'm thankful for Trent for giving us this space to, put this podcast out there where we're trying to create more spaces where we belong, have people feeling at-home-ish because, we all ain't from here.
Yeah, that's right.
But how do we make this a home for everybody? This is home.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been here 46 years, so I know it better than any place I've ever lived, And
I appreciate the work that you've done because it really allows me to do more of the work that we're doing today.
You're certainly welcome. And I do it from the heart.
Yes.
And I
feel that.
I do it because I've been blessed to the point that I don't need anybody to give me anything to do anything. I do this because I love it.
Right.
Yeah, I very seldom even take a cup of coffee. I don't want 15 cents for the work that I do. It's because my pleasure and the value that I get is seeing someone else's life change.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Having an impact on someone else's life.
So our final question, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. And I almost don't want to wrap up. We can just keep on talking. We'll have more conversations for sure.
Okay.
But in the, things that make us feel most at home, one thing is the people that are around us, food. Food makes us feel at home, but also music. Okay. So if there was a theme song that played when you walked into the room, what would you want it to be? I wish y'all could see the video response here.
Now, that's a hard one. One by Aretha Franklin.
Okay.
Respect.
And
the reason that's very hard, you guys, is that I am a blues guy. I'm a Johnny Taylor, B.B. King,
right?
Bobby Blue Bland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say it.
Yeah. That's who I am. You go get in my car right now and ride a little bit. You're gonna hear some blues. You hear me? But Aretha, respect.
Okay, ain't nothing wrong with
That's
them
what
blues.
I work for. That's what I work for.
Again, thank you so much for.
This was a pleasure. The thing that I think is that they don't want to hear all of this. That's what I try to filter out what you might hear, what you might want to hear, and what you don't want to hear. You know, but I've lived a beautiful life.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I got rewarded for and punished for most is the row that I plowed with a mule.
Mm.
It had to be straight, a straight row.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we became very ingenious about getting that row straight is that we would go to the other end of the row and we would put up a flag on a pole.
Okay.
And we drove that mule straight to that flag. And that's how we got that row. You know, when you grow up with that being your greatest goal and the thing that you wanted to achieve most, and then I look at the things I've accomplished to this day and look back at that, it just touches my heart.
Well, you shared a lot of wisdom with us today.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And I know there's more to offer, so we'll be talking some more for sure.
Okay.
But, you know, one thing I want to take away from this conversation, especially, you know, as we're talking about Alabama, Jim Crow, and some of the things that are happening right now in our society, I feel like that was honestly a mic drop moment right there where you were talking about the mule and the row and you're working to get to the flag. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like, you know, 250 years ago, granted, things happened on this continent long before that, but, you know, there was this flag and this idea that we're still trying to get a straight row towards, you know, so I feel like the work that we're doing collectively here is really working each day with each person to get towards that flag. And, you know, the more that we can have these conversations, interact with each other, learn from one another, that is what can give us the opportunity to wise up and rise up.